months where there would be an event, right? And for Canada, this is where I wanted to go. That event was in January, the Freedom Convoy, right? Where people had just said, we've had enough, right? And there was so much misleading information about this event in general, because it was made to seem like this was a bunch of anti-vaccine truckers that were fucking angry they couldn't work anymore.
Not just that, Nazis, predominantly white, conspiracy theorists,
misogynists,
unacceptable
views.
Every bad name you could throw at these truckers, they threw it at them.
And
after repetition from years too, like sorry, it's just a bit of an aside, but like people like rejecting people from their families for not doing it, right?
Yeah.
When they come out and they've heard this constant message, this propaganda that, I would say it was Joseph Goebbels, but it wasn't. Joseph Goebbels he learned from P.T. Barnum. P.T. Barnum was the original master of public relations and messaging, and then like they just set the table, right? They made people suffer enough, so like let's get the jab. I watched, man, I was so pissed about this. I watched a few months ago a South Park episode when the jab first came out. I was so mad. Matt Stone and Trey Parker freaking sold out. That was the most disappointing South Park episode I've ever seen. And I freaking love South Park.
Yeah.
And like, guys, like, what the hell is this? Like,
that was like Rage Against the Machine. You needed your vaccine or whatever to
Rage
Against concerts. Are you kidding me?
We're raging against the machine. Vote Joe Biden.
They are the machine. Yeah, they're the machine now.
Yeah, but like for Canadians, it was the boil over moment. That was the boil over moment where, and in fairness to Canadians, it wasn't violent at all. There was nothing violent about that movement. To this day, the Ottawa police officer chief can't answer the question whether there was guns there or not, because there weren't any guns. They didn't seize any guns. There weren't any guns. There was nothing but peaceful movement. Obviously, there was some, in every situation, there's going to be bad characters, but in terms of what was actually happening, there was a group of people, vaccinated and unvaccinated, who were saying, it's time, look at what's happening, it's time to end these mandates that are requiring people to either give up their individual freedoms or rights or give up their personal body sovereignty, and we need to collectively as a group move on. I thought the initial and the finishing message of that whole movement was very positive, and which is why it was something where I was drawn towards and I supported, because I wasn't supportive because they were there fighting against, the government. Fuck the government. I was there because I believe everybody should be able to consciously make a choice for what's best for them and their family. And I believe that's what the fight was about. And well, what ended up happening was Justin Trudeau ended up doing probably one of the most fucking disgusting, stupidest, disgusting things, and putting in the Emergency Act. And I wanted to talk about this a lot earlier, but the news cycle changes so fast, and it was all overwhelming at the time for me, and I figured it's a good time to bring it up now. I can go through all the bullshit that was happening, but they were freezing bank accounts. Like, these are things that you wouldn't even hear, you wouldn't even think of that would happen in a first world nation like Canada. The image is there, but it seems to be ignored, of a fucking police force trampling a First Nations chief.
So he had to revoke that, the freezing of the accounts, because they're trying to bring in this new digital banking system. Yeah. So once we catch on that they could just freeze our assets, then we're probably going to start revolting. And so that's why he got rid of that Emergency Measures Act.
Not just that, but historically his father did the same thing with the War Measures Act, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's not a different play than what happened. And it's used to combat terrorism, right? It's the idea that they're using it for the greater safety of Canadians, right?
Well, and then they were trying to say that it was one of the most despicable thing that they did in the entire, and it hit the floor of the House of Commons. Everything was when Trudeau stands up and he starts talking about, and they stand behind the swastika. It's like, those people who had the swastika there were not standing behind the swastika. Yes. They were protesting the swastika.
Right. Yeah.
And they used that They
Well,
manipulated
what they
that.
said is this is what Canada is becoming. This
Yeah.
is
Yes,
what we're
exactly.
marching towards, basically.
And they just, and the media just ran with it, and they
Yeah.
showed him saying that. And what the other thing that pissed me off was that conservative rep, the Jewish woman, when she got up and she played the offended role of it. It's like that is why the government is poison, right?
Mm-hmm.
That woman, when she got up, she wasn't offended. She was playing the game. Right, because she knew exactly what Trudeau was doing, and now let's play motion. Like, if the Conservative Party, this is why I ride Paul Revere on Facebook constantly, because he's a piece of shit too, right? The you know, they just play the game. Like, if the Conservatives, they got to get away from this emotional messaging, because that's all it is. Like, when I brought up Cialdini and influence, that's all it is. They manipulate. You've never bought something in your life that wasn't an emotional decision. Like, think about it.
Yeah,
true. Right. And so they just do this messaging, and then Trudeau brings this up on the House of Commons floor. And then the Jewish woman gets up, and then what happens? Okay. She had a right to get up and say what she said. Right. However, then the media runs on it. And now they're trying to play the whole emotional thing, the right wing media. There's no such thing as right wing, and there's no such thing as left wing. There's those who seek authority and those who seek liberty. That is it. And they play this fucking game, and people buy it. Like, enough, right? That trucker protest, it was a peaceful protest. They used all the rhetoric they possibly could. I'm sitting here in a third world country watching it from the tropics, and just I'm just disgusted by the Canadian government, by Canadians who believe that shit, right? Like, it's stop and think. Look what you're doing.
Let me ask this question. I think, and this is what as I was watching the whole thing, I'm like, are people going to remember this when it comes to election time? Because I think that everything that people have gone through these last 2 years, Chris, you had to literally change your lifestyle, right? I had a small business. I pretty much shut down, right? I shut down recently, and I was like, I think I'm going to pack it up. But people were convincing me, I'm thinking I'm going to start it back up, but I was going the same route that you were, Chris. Like, hey, you know what? Let me just move on with my life. Yeah. It's just too much stress to be trying to figure out whether I'm open, whether I'm closed, whether I'm open, whether I'm closed. But are people going to remember this when it comes time to hold people accountable? That's the one thing I think, watching this whole thing, I think the one thing that no matter what party is in power, no matter what party is represented, no matter, it's like, we fail to hold these people accountable and make them pay for their rhetoric, for their pandering, for their manipulating of the public. I'm talking any conservative.
Honestly, about that, I wouldn't have shut shit down. Take the fine and wait till it has its day in court. I've heard of people having a fine and they keep pushing back the date because once people start seeing that they can't win those cases, like that the business owner wins because like now we're going against the Constitution, then it sets a precedent for everyone else to open their business and not comply because it's not legal what they're doing and they can't win in court. So.
But so for example, that, right? All the tickets handed out and stuff, yes, fight it. But what I'm saying is I hope people remember all the stuff that they lost and all the things that they had, always had to twist in the wind when this was happening, being labeled something that you were not, because there was truckers that were there that were brown, black.
There was a lot of Sikh
truckers coming from the United States. Everybody was in support of it. That's why I think it influenced the whole nation, because people saw the whole nation in it. Yeah. Right?
Well, it influenced other countries too.
Yeah.
Like the whole world was watching.
Nobody bought the fact that it was racist, right? Nobody, like, people heard Canadians are.
Don't say nobody. I know people who did.
Yeah, I know some people.
Really?
Too, yeah.
Wow. Nobody I know bought that. Nobody I know. All the black people I know were like,
yeah, you need to meet some people.
My uncle's down there. My neighbors down there. These are all people of color who have businesses. A lot of this was a protest from business.
Yeah.
Right? Small business, medium-sized business. They raised so much money to the fact that the government had to be like, no, we don't want people to think that you can be empowered enough. Like, you don't need us. You can just come together, fun stuff, fun protests with your own money, right? Wasn't the account
GoFundMe.
GoFundMe frozen?
Yeah,
right?
so that's what I was gonna come to next.
Sorry.
That's what I was gonna come to next because, I think the one thing people don't realize is the collective group when people actually come together and actually participate and come together. That's the one thing. Like, forget the convoy and the actual parking on the lawn and everything. Like, when we come to the finance part, right? When we talk about hedge funds and all these different groups running these things, the only way they get money is by people giving them money, right? Hedge funds and those kind of things, they don't get money by just sporadically coming. People give them money to invest for them, and that's how they've built this thing. Well, the Freedom Convoy collectively raised more money than almost all Canadian politicians raise for their own campaigns. That's a big fucking deal, right? Even Jagmeet Singh's fucking brother-in-law gave a whole bunch of money, and then they had to retract, right? But my point being is, here's the part that disgusted me the most. The Emergencies Act disgusted me, but this part, when I woke up in the morning and I found out this was happening, I was appalled. Because what ended up happening was the people who donated to the second cause, I think the Give, Send, Go, which was the second website that was replacing it, they got hacked, and all the information from donors was then put on a Google map. And
the Washington Post had a journalist start calling people. That person got raked, though.
So what I ended up doing was to confirm this information, I opened the map on my Google Maps on my phone. And for 4 days, whenever I open up Google Maps to actually navigate somewhere in the fucking city, it was showing me all the drop points of people in the areas that were fucking donating, the amount they donated, their home address, as well as their email. Right? In what first world country can a government, give me a time in history that we have been alive where that has been acceptable to give away private information? And
it's against the law. It's actually against the law.
It's against the law.
It's doxing. It's against the law. But they only punish. I got to bring up left and right as much as I hate to bring that up, because they only punish the people on the so-called right.
Yeah.
If they do that. Look what happened. You could have seen it happen. It happened 2 years ago to Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson's house got invaded by a bunch of Antifa. They were they were screaming, honking the horn, throwing Molotov cocktails at his house.
Oh, wow.
I don't know if it was I don't know if the Molotov cocktails. It was pretty bad though. Like, he has a safe room, his wife and kids or